There's no alcohol allowed in jail, so you have to finish your drink if you go to jail at any time during the game. That's a lot of rules. Hey there YouTube, and welcome back to our channel, your favorite place for all things beer. Today we're going to be talking about some ways to spice up your next game night. We're going to talk about a few different classic board games, some drinks that pair well with those games, as well as some drinking rules that can make it even more exciting to play. First up is Candyland. Candyland is a classic board game, and I think it goes really well with a hard seltzer that's flavored just like candy. Today we have our pink drink from Border Brewing Company. This is a really fun flavor and color. This is prickly pear, lemon, and lime. And look at that color right there. That's perfect for a game of Candyland. We should add some drinking games to spice this up a little bit and make it a little more interesting. This is completely optional, but if you want to do it at home, it'll make the game of Candyland just a little bit more fun. Rule number 1, if anybody lands on a color of a space that matches your pawn, you take a drink. If you land on a color that matches your own pawn, you tell somebody else to take a drink. Number 2, if you warp to a space that's behind you, you have to take a drink. If you warp to a space that's ahead of you, tell somebody else to take a drink. Rule number 3, if you land on a licorice space, that's these black dots on the board, you lose a turn and have to take 2 drinks. And finally, once somebody wins the game by reaching the end of the board, whoever's behind that player has to take the number of drinks for the number of spaces that they're behind. So if you're 10 spaces behind the finish line, you have to take 10 drinks. So don't fall too far behind. Once the first player is finished, you can choose to end the game there, or you can keep playing until all the players have finished. So pink drink is really a great drink for Candyland, just in terms of the color, and also because it's a nice fruity flavor that tastes a lot like candy. And we'll be canning this soon, so you can pick some up and bring it home for your next game night. Don't worry if you didn't get all that. You can find all of these drinking game rules in the description. And if Candyland is not your game, up next is Codenames. Codenames is a social word association game with a spy theme. And of course, if you think spy theme, you're thinking James Bond, martinis, shaken, not stirred, of course. So Codenames and cocktails go really well together. You can make whatever cocktail you want at home, but whichever cocktail you mix up, Codenames and cocktails are a perfect pairing for your next game night. So let's make a cocktail and talk about the drinking rules for this game. So I made one of my favorite cocktails, a Paloma, but you can make whatever cocktail suits your own tastes. Let's get into the drinking rules. The first rule is if your partner doesn't guess any of the words correctly after you give them a clue, you both have to take a drink. The next rule is if your partner guesses all of the words correctly based on your clue, then the other team has to take a drink. And the final rule, and this one's optional, is called the smooth operator rule. The smooth operator rule works like this. Because you're not supposed to say any of the words that are on the board, if you can bring a word up in casual conversation with your partner and the other teams don't catch it, then by the time the next turn happens, they all have to take 1 drink. But if they catch you and call you out on saying one of those words, then your team has to finish your drink. Hey, if you're liking this video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Let's go on to the next game. Sequence. Sequence is a really fun game. It's sort of a combination of a card game and a board game. And anytime I think about cards, it makes me think about poker, which leads me straight to scotch and cigars. It's hard to go wrong with that combination with any game, but in particular, it can be really great with this game, Sequence. So pour yourself 2 fingers of scotch, and let's learn how the drinking rules work for this game. There's really just one simple drinking rule for this game, but it's going to make it a little bit more interesting. At the beginning of the game, everybody draws 1 or 2 cards, your preference. Then throughout the game, anytime any of those cards is chosen by any player, that player has to take a drink. These rules apply throughout the entire game, and the last man standing wins. You can interpret that however you like. So grab some friends, light one up, and try this one out at home. Next up is Risk. Risk is the game of strategic conquest, a game of strategy and a little bit of luck. This is the Game of Thrones version. Whichever version of Risk you're playing, it's typically set in the past, probably thousands of years ago. And since beer has been made for thousands of years, I couldn't think of a better pairing than Risk and craft beer. For this one, we've got our backyard lager. So let's crack open a can and get started on the drinking rules. Rule number 1, anytime you lose a territory, take a drink. Rule number 2, anytime you lose a unit, you also take a drink. The last rule is optional, but I think pretty fun. At any point during the game, if you elect to take 3 drinks, you can re-roll 1 die. So grab a local craft beer of your choice and try this one out at home. But if Risk isn't your thing, you can always try Monopoly. Monopoly is one of the more classic board games that's out there. It's all about wealth, money, and owning property. What better drink to pair with those concepts than a glass of champagne? So let's pop this bottle and get started. So now that you have your champagne poured, it's time to get into some drinking game rules. The first set of rules are around properties. If you land on somebody's property, you have to take a drink. If you land on the property and they have a house on it, it's 2 drinks. If it's a hotel, it's 3 drinks. If at any point during the game you roll doubles or have to pay a luxury tax, you also have to take 1 drink. If you land exactly on go, you give out 2 drinks. If you're in a situation where you have to mortgage your property, you got to take 1 drink. There's no alcohol allowed in jail, so you have to finish your drink if you go to jail at any time during the game. If somebody comes to visit you while you're in jail, you take 1 drink. If you have to pay your water or electric bill, take 1 drink. You also have to take 1 drink anytime you land on someone's railroad, an additional drink for every other railroad that they own. Anytime you land on the luxury tax spot, you're going to pour 1 drink and put it in the middle of the board as a community drink. Then if somebody lands on the free parking spot at any point during the game, they have to slam that community drink. You get to assign 1 drink to anybody else anytime you get money back from the government. And finally, if you must pay because of a community chest or chance card, you take 1 drink. So there are a lot of opportunities to give and take drinks in this game. If you find yourself in a position where you forget some of the rules, you can always look in the description and refresh your memory. So that's it for today. If you have any game ideas, let us know in the comments. But for now, cheers.